If you like our content, please support us on Patreon. The link is below. Welcome to the Twisted Tentacle Inn. I'm your innkeeper, Vase Odin, and today we'll be discussing On the Hunt. Forbidden! On the Hunt is a Guardian event from the Black Stars Rise Mythos pack. It costs 1 resource, has an intellect and combat icon, and has text that reads, Fast. Play when you would draw an encounter card during the Mythos phase. Instead, search the top 9 cards in the encounter deck for an enemy and spawn it engaged with you instead of its normal spawn location, and shuffle the encounter deck. If you cannot, draw the top card of the encounter deck. When it was first released, there was a lot of rumbling about it becoming a Guardian staple. After all, ignoring treacheries that can cripple Guardians by hitting their weakness, which is usually sanity, and instead placing an enemy in front of them, which they are usually good at dealing with, seemed like a great concept. But the card is very rarely used in decks today. Let's explore the reasons for that and possible good uses for the card. Let's start with the question, what is it good for? It works best when looking for an enemy with victory points. This card greatly increases your chances to do so, and therefore potentially pick up some extra experience points you may otherwise have missed. It's also good for investigators with abilities that trigger upon the defeat of an enemy. Roland Banks, William Yorick, Tony Morgan, and anyone using evidence from the core set or interrogation from the Circle Undone Deluxe expansion would greatly benefit. Just move to a location with high shroud and during the Mythos phase, play On the Hunt. Then play interrogation to nab the clue or kill the enemy and play evidence to pick up the clue after it's dead. There are also some scenarios where enemies can help you. For example, in Curtain Call from the Path to Carcosa, you can look for fanatics to help you get clues off the higher shroud locations for you, doing a lot of the hard work. Another good use is in scenarios where enemies tend to spawn away from you and you have to seek them out. With On the Hunt, enemies spawn at your location, ignoring their normal spawn instructions. This can be very helpful in several scenarios. But on most occasions, this card is going to hurt you more than help you. If you're planning on using On the Hunt to avoid treacheries, it's generally far worse to pull an enemy than a treachery. To make matters worse, take what Duke Loves Biscuits from Card Game DB says about it. Enemies drawn with this essentially have the revelation effect, lose 1 resource and 1 card, and spawn this enemy in front of you. What he means by this is that instead of drawing a Rotting Remains and potentially taking 3 horror, if you play this card to draw an enemy and say you pull a Swarm of Rats, you're not just pulling the Swarm of Rats. You're pulling the Swarm of Rats which is also costing you the card that you played and the resource that you paid to play it, making it worse than having drawn the rats on their own. But it gets worse. In multiplayer, if you use this card because you're the combatant in the group and pull an enemy only to also have your teammates pull enemies, could mean that your team is going to be in serious trouble, whereas not playing the card may have prevented at least 1 enemy from engaging your team. It's even worse in solo because you'll generally spend more actions killing enemies than dealing with a treachery. This is my biggest issue with this card. Sure, there are some brutal treacheries in the game, but for the most part, it's enemies that generally sap the most actions from you. The average enemy has 3 health, which means that if luck is on your side, it'll take you at least 2 to 3 actions to deal with it. And in solo, 2 or 3 actions dealing with an enemy is pretty much a wasted turn. On the Hunt is usually going to slow you down and cost you a resource and a card on top of that. Overall, I find On the Hunt is a very niche card that works in certain decks that benefit from fighting enemies, but is a wasted slot in most decks. In summary, I can't generally recommend using this card in most decks. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, there are certainly cases where it could come in handy, but those are specific builds, and there are currently some amazing options for dealing with nasty treacheries already that are much better options than On the Hunt.
Down there.
And that does it for today's video. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, consider leaving a thumbs up. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below. I am your innkeeper, Vase Odin, and this is the Twisted Tentacle Inn. Check in anytime. I'll talk to you then.